Have you ever really thought about what a bank is? I mean, at its core? You could almost think of it like a fortress, a heavily fortified structure with one main job, to protect the money inside. Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at the blueprint for that fortress in Pakistan, the Banking Companies Ordinance of 1962. This is the master plan that makes sure every bank is built to be a safe haven for your money.
So that leads us to the big question, right? How is a bank built to be safe? It doesn't just happen by accident. The answer is right here, in this incredibly detailed and powerful law, the Ordinance. It's like the architectural blueprint, the engineering manual, and the rulebook, all rolled into one.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the blueprint itself, just how powerful this law is. Then, we'll see how a strong foundation gets built. After that, we'll look at who gets chosen to be the castle guard. We'll dive into their rules of engagement, and finally, we'll climb the watchtower to see how the whole operation is supervised. All right, let's start at square one, the law itself. The Banking Companies Ordinance of 1962 isn't just a collection of helpful suggestions. Oh no, it is the supreme, absolute law that governs every single banking institution in Pakistan. It sets the rules of the game, and they are not up for negotiation. So who exactly has to follow these rules? Well, the law is crystal clear. A banking company is any firm that takes your deposits, public money, with the whole point of lending it out or investing it. It's a simple definition, but it's so important. It separates a real bank from, say, a retail store that might offer its own financing. If you're in the business of using public money to make more money, you are a bank, and you play by these rules. And this is the part that gives the law its teeth. A bank can write its own internal rulebook, its memorandum or articles of association. But if a single one of those rules contradicts the 1962 ordinance, it's worthless. It's void. The law is absolute. This means no bank can create its own little loophole or special exception. It guarantees that every single bank is held to the same high standard of safety. Okay, so we've established who makes the rules. Now let's get into how the fortress is actually built. Any good fortress needs a really deep and solid foundation, something that can handle any attack, or, in this case, a financial shock. And for a bank, that foundation is all about its capital, its reserves, and its assets. Okay, this is pretty clever. It's a rule designed to stop banks from puffing out their chests and pretending they're bigger than they are. Let's break it down. Authorized capital is the absolute maximum a bank could be worth. Subscribed capital is what investors have promised to put in, but the most important one is paid-up capital. That's the actual, real cash in the bank. The law forces this 50-50-50 structure, making sure a bank's stated size is always tied to real, cold, hard cash. Think of this as a mandatory rainy day fund. Every year, before a bank can even think about paying dividends to its shareholders, it has to take a big slice of its profits, at least 20%, and lock it away in a reserve fund. And it has to keep doing this until that safety net is just as big as its paid-up capital. It's basically a forced savings plan that builds a massive cushion against any future problems. Now, this is like the cash you keep right by the front door for emergencies. Demand liabilities. That's just a fancy term for all the money that customers can withdraw at a moment's notice. For the smaller, non-scheduled banks, the law says they have to keep at least 5% of that total amount in actual physical cash. It's a critical buffer so that if a bunch of people suddenly want their money, the bank doesn't break a sweat. And here's the final layer of that financial shield. It's not just about cash. Banks have to hold a certain percentage of all their liabilities, everything from checking accounts to long-term deposits, in assets that can be turned into cash almost instantly. We're talking cash, gold, and super safe government bonds. This is the bank's ultimate emergency fund. A fortress, no matter how strong its walls are, is only as good as the people defending it. And that's why the ordinance is incredibly strict about who gets to be a director or a senior manager at a bank. These are the castle guards, and they have to be absolutely top-notch. So how do they ensure that? Well, this is the main gatekeeper, the fit and proper test. And it's not just about having a good resume. The State Bank of Pakistan looks at a person's integrity, their competence, their reputation, the whole package. Anyone with real power at a bank, from the CEO down to a major shareholder, has to pass this test to prove they're worthy of being trusted with the public's money. So what happens if someone who passed the test starts slipping? Maybe they're not so fit and proper anymore. Well, the process for removing them is really clear and structured. The SBB doesn't just act on a whim. It starts with a warning, then an order to step down, and, importantly, the person gets a fair chance to tell their side of the story, and they can even appeal the decision. It's a system that's designed to be both firm and fair. The law also has a list of absolute deal breakers. You are automatically banned from running a bank if you've ever gone bankrupt, if you failed to pay your own debts, or if you've been convicted of a serious crime. The rules also go after conflicts of interest. You can't be a director at another big company or be running some other business on the side without getting the SVP's okay. The message is clear. When you're guarding the fortress has to be your one and only focus. Okay, so we've got a strong foundation, we've got trustworthy guards, but you still need really strict rules of engagement to prevent problems from happening on the inside. This next part is all about the specific things banks are forbidden from doing, all to protect them from themselves. This one is huge. A bank is absolutely forbidden from giving out loans that are secured by its own shares. Now, why is that? Well, imagine a bank lending people money to buy its stock. It could create a dangerous, artificial bubble in its share price. If that bubble pops, the whole system is at risk. It's a fundamental rule to keep the bank's capital safe and sound. And here's another really critical one. Unpaid capital is basically money that shareholders have promised to invest but haven't actually paid in yet. The law says a bank can't use that promised money, that IOU, as collateral to go out and borrow more funds. It just makes sense, right? You can't get a loan based on a promise. A floating charge sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. Think of it as a loan that's secured against a company's general pool of assets, not one specific thing like a building. The ordinance says a bank can't just create this kind of broad claim over its own assets without getting explicit permission from the SVP first. This protects depositors' money from being risked in funny ways. I really like this rule. It's all about priorities. The bank's health comes first, shareholder profits come second. All those big upfront costs, what they call capitalized expenses, like building new branches or developing software, all of that has to be completely. It forces the bank to get financially strong before it starts sharing the wealth. So last but not least, how do we know for sure that all these rules are actually being followed? Well, every good fortress needs a watchtower, a system for transparency, reporting, and independent inspection. And that is exactly the role that accounting and auditing play. And the timeline for this is tight. It never stops. At the end of every year, the accounts have to be prepared. Within 3 months, those accounts, signed off by an independent auditor, have to be on the state bank's desk. Foreign banks even have to post their balance sheets in every single one of their branches for the public to see. This constant cycle of reporting makes sure there are no dark corners where problems can hide. Now, this quote really gets to the heart of what a bank auditor does. They're not just there to check the math. Their legal duty, stated right here, is to confirm that the bank's activities were actually legal and within the powers the ordinance gave them. In a way, they're not just accountants. They're the last line of defense, checking for legal compliance. And to make sure these auditors can do their job without feeling any pressure from the bank they're auditing, the law basically builds a protective wall around them. They have to be on an SVP-approved list, they get a fixed 3-year term, and can't be fired early without the SVP signing off. And here's the kicker. If they find something seriously wrong, they are legally required to report it directly to the SVP. Their loyalty is to the system, not the bank's management. So there you have it. The Banking Companies Ordinance of 1962 is the master blueprint for a financial fortress. It lays out the foundation, it picks the guards, it sets the rules of engagement, and it builds the watchtower. But that leaves us with one final thought. A blueprint from 1962, no matter how good, can't possibly anticipate all the new threats of today's world. So it begs the question, if the ordinance is the blueprint, who is the ultimate architect, the one who's always updating it, always reinforcing the walls to protect against modern threats? Well, the answer points directly to the ongoing, ever-watchful role of the State Bank of Pakistan.